Cyberpunk 2077. One of the most controversial games that has released in a long time. Some people hate it and some people absolutely love it, but you cannot deny this was one of the most anticipated games of our generation, if not of all time. I've never seen a game with as much hype surrounding it as Cyberpunk 2077. So much so to the point where it was destined to flop. There was no way a game with that much hype could come out and please everybody. There was way too much hype surrounding it. It was destined to flop. But holy cow, it flopped so hard. It was absolutely atrocious on base generation consoles such as Xbox Ones and PlayStation 4s. It was absolutely atrocious. As you guys know, the game hardly even ran on those base generation consoles, causing it to flop so very hard, as well as there was a lot of things that CD Projekt Red promised us would be in the game, and it just wasn't. So this game was a game that definitely flopped harder than it should have, even with the amount of hype surrounding it. So today we're going to be talking about Cyberpunk 2077 in its current state, and if it's fixed, if it's worth playing, because as most of you should know, the game was almost unplayable on base generation consoles, which is a big shame because most of its player base is playing it on base generation consoles. Cyberpunk, come on, what you doing, CD Projekt Red? What are you doing? Most of your player base is on the base generation consoles. With the limited stock of the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series S and the PlayStation 5s, there was almost nobody that had access to these newer generation consoles to even play the game on. And yet CD Projekt Red failed to showcase us gameplay before the game released on these base generation consoles. Instead, it was just PC and I believe Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. I could be wrong, but it was definitely only on a very high-end PC that they showed us the gameplay on. So of course, everyone was excited for it. It looked like it actually worked. It didn't. It most definitely didn't. Not on base generation consoles, which most of the people were playing this game from was a base generation console. So unfortunately, most of the player base could hardly even play the game. They could hardly even appreciate the game for what it was, and honestly, it is something awesome. It is a great game. It is absolutely amazing, but most people couldn't even play it because of crashes, because of game-breaking bugs, glitches, and that sort of thing. I'm sure all of you guys know about it, so let's just dive right into it. Let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077 in its current state, and if it's even playable. The reason that I decided to make this video today is because today came out the patch 1.2. At least the day that I'm recording this video. It was 2 days ago from the date that this video is being released. But today for me, the new patch came out and I decided to make this video to see if it is even workable, if it's even playable in its current state. Now, patch 1.2 came out with a lot, and I mean a lot of bug fixes and just fixes in general. They did a lot with this patch, so it's really good to see how much they actually fixed and how much they're trying to improve the game that should have been already improved. There's a ton of different bug fixes in this patch, and I mean a lot. I'll leave a link to the patch notes in the description below if you want to go check it out yourself. We're not going to be covering even close to all of the patch fixes. I mean, there's a lot of them. We're not even going to be covering close to all of them, but we're going to be touching on some super important fixes that they're making to the game, and we're going to be kind of deciding, is it going to be actually playable now? Is it going to actually be fun? Is it fixed? And I'm excited to talk about it because I really do think it is. I think Cyberpunk 2077 is in a state where it's going to be much more enjoyable and even playable for a lot of its player base. I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of footage from the Xbox Series X. That's what I game on mainly, but I do still have my base Xbox One. It is the first Xbox One that came out, and I'm going to be showing you guys gameplay from that Xbox One as well, so you can judge whether it's working on previous gen console, and then I'll show you guys most of the footage from the newer gen console. Like I said, there's a lot of different fixes with this patch, and I mean a lot. There's actually some fixes in it that are very interesting to me. The most notable thing that I'd like to go over is the stability and performance section of the patch notes. And specifically where it says here, this section discusses the changes that enter all of the platforms, but many of them make a bigger difference on last generation consoles and lower performance machines. This means that CD Projekt Red is going to be fixing the game for previous generation consoles, where it was the most broken, was the previous generation consoles. So a lot of these fixes are for older consoles, for those of you guys where most of you are playing the game on, where it needs to be fixed. There's improved stability and performance of the engine and rendering the game, which reduces the number of random crashes. And then there's memory optimizations and memory management improvements in various systems, reducing the number of crashes. So there's reducing the number of crashes all throughout this patch. It reduces the number of crashes in the game, which is such a big deal. It's something that a lot of people were experiencing, especially on those previous generation platforms. Fixes like this, console specific, fixed an issue on the PlayStation 4. Store. That line right there is very intriguing to me, considering that this game isn't even available on the PlayStation Store. So that means that they're working to get it back onto the PlayStation Store. So that's right there. That's a big fix. There was a lot of issues with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and it looks here like in the console-specific fixes, they're fixing a lot of PlayStation 4 and Xbox One issues. Fixing rendering issues with the PlayStation 4. Fixing issues with the Xbox One. Fixing issues with the PlayStation 4. It's not even available on the PlayStation Store, which leads me to believe I think it will be available soon on the PlayStation 4 Store or the PlayStation Store. So I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about that, leading me to think that a lot more people are going to actually be able to experience this game how they should have been able to experience upon release. There's been a lot of fixes to the graphics, audio, and animation as well, which is another big issue a lot of people were having with the game. One of the things about a roleplay game that you never ever want to have to deal with is it looking bad, such as NPCs moving after they've been killed. That's a big one that I'm super excited about. They fixed NPCs moving after being killed. Look at that. So no longer you kill NPCs and they start twitching everywhere and losing their freaking minds. They no longer do that. That's pretty awesome. That's something that actually helps you engage into a roleplay game a lot better. That's something that should have never really been an issue in the first place, but hey, they're fixed it, so that's good. There's improvements in textures and rendering from afar. They fixed visual issue with the fast travel and cinematic transition, adjusted visual quality of some of the elements when underwater, improvements in materials, details, and quality. They've really fixed a ton of things in this patch, as you guys can see. V's heads are now correctly displayed on a steering wheel while driving. V now leans out of a vehicle correctly during chases. Like, all of this stuff that they've changed is just huge. It's going to make the game so much more playable. Another pretty amazing thing is Cyberpunk actually fixed the way that V sleeps, which was a huge issue with me. Are you even joking? Who sleeps like that? But they fixed it, and I thought that was really cool. V sleeps like an actually sane person, even though technically V's not, but still, you know what I mean. Another pretty awesome little minor bug fix that they changed was a driving sensitivity bar meter thing. You can choose the sensitivity of your driving, and I think that's pretty nice. It wasn't super noticeable in my opinion, but I haven't played around with it that much either. It's a pretty cool feature. You can now change the sensitivity of your driving, which is pretty awesome. So after diving into the Xbox One version of Cyberpunk 2077, there's already noticeable graphics and frame rate changes in the game. I didn't experience any frame rate drops at all whatsoever after recording this segment for you guys. Literally no frame rate drops whatsoever, as well as the graphics were improved a ton. Now, of course, the Xbox One, I believe it was only in 30 frames per second. Of course, it's not going to be running at 60. It is the first generation of the Xbox One, but it was running at a crisp and smooth 30 without dropping whatsoever, and then it was running at a clean 1080p, which is really good for that generation of hardware, as well as compared to what it was running before on it. It is really good. It was super stable, it was super steady, and it was easily playable. I mean, easily playable compared to what we had before. Before, it was super laggy, it was super hard to play the game, the load times were atrocious, and I even noticed load time improvements after this patch was installed. It loaded a lot quicker on my Xbox One. I could actually play the game, I could see things, there weren't game-breaking bugs, and the biggest improvement that I noticed was driving. When I was driving, I didn't notice a ton of bugs. Before, when I was driving, because of the fact that the map had to reload itself so quickly, and my Xbox couldn't really handle it, it would have a lot of glitches or bugs while I was driving. While I was trying to get to a new area, it was trying to catch up with itself, and it wouldn't quite load all the way. This didn't happen in this time. Now that we've got the new patch installed, I would drive long distances and it would be just fine. I would still be able to see the map just fine. It would still look great. Now, of course, it doesn't look quite as good as it does on the Xbox Series X, but again, this is the very first generation of an Xbox One. Of course, it's not going to be up to par with an Xbox Series X, but it was easily playable. I mean, if we're talking about playability here, you could easily play through Cyberpunk 2077 now on an Xbox One, and you wouldn't experience any of the crazy things that you were experiencing before when the game originally released. If you guys, for whatever reason, don't believe that I was actually recording this on an Xbox One, I don't know why you wouldn't, but here's just some proof for you. I've got my Xbox hooked up to the Elgato here. I've got the gameplay on my monitor, and then the gameplay coming on my computer right here that I'm recording. And my Xbox Series X isn't even on, so you guys should, believe that this is from an Xbox One, but there's those people out there. I already foresee it in the comment section. If I don't include this segment, I already see somebody going down there and saying that was actually my Xbox Series X. There's no way that was an Xbox One. After this patch was installed, there was a noticeable difference in the graphics, even on my Xbox Series X. It looked so much more crisp and so much better after this patch was installed, as well as the frames were so much smoother. The game really noticeably improved performance-wise, even after this patch was installed. It always worked great on the Xbox Series X, but it looks superb now after this patch is installed, and I noticed it right away. The graphics look a lot cleaner, and it runs just a lot better overall. So my final verdict for this new patch and the patches that have already come out for Cyberpunk 2077 so far, and the question of does it work, is it playable? My answer is absolutely. It is absolutely playable on all platforms. I would be willing to say that. I mean, I only have the Xbox platforms, so I obviously can't 100% say it is on all platforms. But if it's workable on my brick of an Xbox One, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say it'll be good on a base PS4 as well. It should be working great on all platforms. You guys have seen it here with the gameplay that I showed you from the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X. It's running great. It's running smooth. There aren't crashes. There aren't frame drops. I spent an hour and a half on my Xbox One playing and just progressing on my character, and I didn't experience one single crash. I hardly experienced any frame drops. There was one little spot where I experienced a frame drop, and that was it. Other than that, there was nothing even close to game breaking, and it was nowhere near as bad as it was when the game first came out. And then as for the Series X, that thing's an absolute beast. I experienced no issues whatsoever, no frame drops, no graphical deprovements, anything like that. It just looked phenomenal the entire time. It ran smooth, and the load times were just incredible. So this game is definitely in a playable state now. I feel like this is the game that should have been released on day one. Where it's at right now is where people's expectations were for it to be as far as how it ran on day one. If this was the game that released back when the game released in December, we would all have a totally different view on Cyberpunk 2077, I guarantee it. This game is up to working standards, it works great, it plays great on any console. You guys are going to have a great time with it. I really hope that this convinced some of you to give it another shot if you haven't, and I really hope that it convinced some of you to go out and try the game if you have a previous generation console. It's been working wonders for me, and before it didn't at all. So it is noticeably different. These patches have actually improved it on previous generation tech. That's not just coming from somebody who didn't play it day one on that previous generation tech. I played it day one on my Xbox One and my Xbox Series X to test it out, and it is a noticeable improvement with these patches installed. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful to you guys. Let me know what you guys think about Cyberpunk 2077 in the comment section below. Like I said, I absolutely adore this game. It is a work of art. I absolutely love it, and I really hope that with these new patches, a lot more people are able to experience this wonderful game as I have been able to on my Xbox Series X, and I think it's going to be working great on all platforms, and I hope that people will see that soon enough. I hope you guys get to experience this game if you haven't already. It's absolutely wonderful. Let me know what you guys think about this new patch in the comment section below. My name is Jdyo. I post 3 videos a week, and I stream 3 times a week, so if you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe.